Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast, your favorite World War II-based podcast. And joining us tonight is the one and only Gene and Debbie. Now, Debbie is the granddaughter, and Gene is the son of what we, the general public, know as Wild Bill Guarnere. But, Debbie, I was watching one of your videos, and you were educating your TikTok audience, and, well, the rest of the world, myself included, that it's not exactly the way your family's last name is correctly pronounced. Is that the case?
How do you pronounce your last name?
I pronounce my last name Guarnere. Now, here's the background on this. My grandfather, we have papers where my grandfather was Guarnieri, like the violin.
Okay.
When he came over here, they just changed it to Nere. My father says Bill Guarnere. My brother says Guarnere. My cousins say Guarnere. So it sounds French. People think it was French, but no, it's Italian. And it's just the way you're growing up. It's just the way I pronounced it.
Gene, give us the background on your father a little bit. I know that before the war, he went off to join the Civilian Conservation Corps, right? And then he wanted to enlist in some early officer training, but was like super young. He's like 15 years old, correct?
That is correct. What happened was he was the youngest of 10 children. And there was like a stables across the street from his house. He would sleep there. This is completely different than what we know today. And his mother wanted him. She lied about his age, said he was 17, to send him to this CVS school. And he went there for 3 years for officers. He was going to be officer trained. And what happened was World War II broke out and the school closed. That's how he stopped going there. But he was underage when he went there. So when he went to join the paratroopers, he never mentioned that he had this background. And he just, he became a staff sergeant, and the rest is history in the series. I don't know how 10 kids could fit in a row house. I grew up in a row house.
Yeah.
And he said we slept wherever we could, kid. And that was the way it was. And there's a lot of pictures of him that we have of him as a kid. He might have more pictures than you do as a kid, and even myself. And I don't know how that happened. He has black and white, saddle shoes on. And
Are you sure it's not one kid and a kid?
No. and all the guys on the corner. So he's with all the, all his little Guido friends with the hats and the jackets and all. It was pretty neat to see some of these pictures. I'll be 78 this month. He was this age when Band of Brothers came out.
Yeah.
I kid you not. Debbie could vouch for this. This guy went everywhere. He was never home. Every year in work, I would get him one of them, calendar books, and right along his book was full. People would pick him up daily. He'd go out to breakfast. He was in Europe. He was in California. He was up in Sea Malarkey in Oregon. He was all over the place, and he never slowed down. Yeah, I remember he had a '59 Buick, and I took it out one night. I was probably 17, whatever, 18. And I was racing some kid in reverse, and the transmission went in reverse. It broke. So when I came home, there was a parking space in front of the house, and he was sitting in the window, and I put it in reverse. I knew it wasn't going to work, and he's coming. Actually, I never told him that anyway. If he's listening now, he'll know. I blew the reverse that race. That was that stupid stuff. But yeah, he didn't. There was nothing he couldn't do. That's the truth. There was nothing that he didn't. He couldn't. He would did everything.
What's the top end speed in reverse on a 68 Buick?
Well, I don't know if I even won the race. The point I was racing an Oldsmobile, but it's just stupid things you did when I was a kid. But he was there. He would actually literally kill for me, my brother, or my mother. He would actually kill somebody. We knew that then that something was different about him, because he would get in not an argument, somebody a confrontation or something, and he'd have a pipe in his hand. He's ready to go to the mattresses. But we didn't think anything of him. He even collected for my grandfather, my mother's father, when he got out of service. He was collecting money for loans. This guy's got a wooden leg. He was a different kind of guy. But he was gentle as a lamb, unless you crossed him. But I was on the end, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Best place to be.
Yeah, he was good. He was a good guy. He was easygoing. He was never violent or anything. He was a nice guy. And he was a very personable, and he was a big asset to the Band of Brothers after the series. He was probably the most popular veteran going all over the place. I mean, he was in that one of them. They came out with a book, the most important high veterans. He was number 56 out of 100. And he was pretty cool, but he never got caught up in that. He never was above anything. When he raised money, him and Babe sent money to Shifty Powers who needed money and help, and they would send money to him. And they didn't have money, so they would just, what little they had, they just gave away.
I know the book series, long before the miniseries came, the book series came from Steve Ambrose, visiting a couple of people and then becoming aware of the reunions that your father was basically key in putting together for all those years.
Yeah.
Do you remember like what your father's response was when someone said, "Hey, I want to come sit down and talk to you guys and, to you and your brothers in arms, if you will, about a book I want to write"? How did that kind of present itself to him, and what was his first thoughts on that?
The way it happened was the reunion was in New Orleans. My father would excuse me, set up the reunions every year, and he'd pick up whatever they were. They moved it around. This year was going to be in New Orleans, and there was a little blurb in the newspaper that the 101st Airborne was going to be so and so, something in New Orleans. And Stephen Ambrose sent a Marine over, I think it was, to go and talk to these people. So this is from my father. When a guy came in to the hospitality room and he wanted to talk to people, and all, my father basically threw him out and said, "Who the frig are you, kid?" He's asking questions. And then it's, Stephen Ambrose came. I mean, it settled down but they didn't let him invade their privacy. They were very close, and it wasn't like after Band of Brothers where everybody wanted to be around him. Nobody really wanted to be around him. Just their intimate family, wife, maybe a couple of kids would go. George Les was one of them. They couldn't leave George Les home because they ready like the house on fire. But most of the kids didn't go, and it was just family. So anybody else that went really wasn't allowed. There was so many different groups of World War II: Marines, Navy, sure, whatever, Army, Airborne, and a lot of them didn't stick together at all.
Yeah,
they didn't have reunions. My dad started maybe running the reunions, I think, at 47, 48, when he was able. He was in the hospital with Joe Toy for a year in 1946, 47, and what he did was he just became the centerpiece, and he loved doing this. So you have, and they would get together, and then they would try and get one more person next year. You'd bring somebody, and that's how it grew. And I think one year they had like 85 of the men were there in California.
This has been a Digital 410 production.